Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of Foraging for Beginners. I really hope you enjoyed episode 1 and that you found some lovely edible weeds whilst you were out in your garden in April. There'll probably still be there this month as well. We're into May now and the sun has come out, as you can see. So I'm doing this episode about riversides and waterways and plants and things that you can find in moist areas. And at the beginning of each of these videos, I'm going to give you some extra little foraging tips. And the things I'm going to talk about right now are the dangers of foraging. There are a few. You might think that because I'm beside a river and I've brought my beautiful daughter Bonnie down here with me. Got chicken pox at the moment, haven't you, Bonnie? Yeah, feel good though, don't you? Good. That I'd talk about the dangers of being beside water, you know, falling in and drowning and things like that. They're just normal dangers for anyone who goes out walking beside waterways. Keep your eyes on your children if you're around water, and if you're really worried, make sure you know how to swim. They're not dangers specifically associated with foraging. You might also think I'm going to talk about the danger of poisoning. Poisoning should not be a danger for a sensible forager. I've never poisoned myself or anyone else yet, because I follow the first rule of foraging, and that is really simple. Just never eat anything unless you know exactly what it is and that it's edible. There are a few dangers from foraging though. I'm going to show you a very phototoxic plant later on in this video. But for me, the real dangers of foraging are parasites and insects. So we're going to talk about some plants that grow in ditches and drainage areas and things like that. And I'm going to talk about some nasty parasites when we find those. But for me, the real dangers of foraging are the insects that we have in the UK. We're really lucky in the UK. It's not like Australia here. The most poisonous thing we have in this country is the adder, and that is a snake that can give you a very nasty bite. It is potentially deadly. And I have at one point actually come across an adder whilst I was out foraging. I was bent down looking at a mushroom, and Eric, my colleague, said to me, "Marlo, don't move." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because there's an adder coiled up about 2 feet to your right." I looked over and yes, there was an adder coiled up looking very defensive. But all I did was move away slowly and the adder did not strike. They do not want to bite you unless you mess with them in some way or you tread on them. So they're not really a danger. But ticks are, for me, the most dangerous thing for any forager. Anywhere that you go foraging where deer roam wild, there might be deer ticks around, and deer ticks carry something called Lyme's disease, which is a very, very serious worry. If you do get bitten by a tick, and it will happen if you're out foraging or if you're just out in nature a lot of the time, then you have to check the area that you've had the bite from the tick and see if there's any reddening whatsoever. There's a particularly distinctive target mark which often goes or comes up around the area where a tick infected with Lyme's disease has bitten you. But really simply, if you've been bitten by a tick and there's any reddening around the area where you've had that tick bite, you should go to the doctors and get a short course of antibiotics, and that negates any risk of Lyme's disease. If you don't go and get those antibiotics early, then Lyme's disease can become something very serious. Around here at this time of year as well, I've also got to worry a little bit about the Blandford fly. We know that it's pretty prevalent around here, and that's why I'm wearing trousers and boots even on this nice sunny day, and that's why Bonnie's got her legs covered. The Blandford fly is a fly that bites, and it's the worst biting fly we have in the UK. It only flies to about 1/2 metre in height, and it bites your legs. And if you want to see something quite horrible on Google, look up Blandford fly bites. They're not a nice thing at all. Another danger when you're eating anything new, which is what you'll be doing when you start foraging, is that you might have an allergic reaction to whatever it is that you've eaten. Most plants that we go foraging for are deemed perfectly safe, and most mushrooms as well, but some are known to cause an allergic reaction more often than others. So amongst the plants, hogweed is known to cause an allergic reaction sometimes, and in the mushroom world, this one here, beautiful bright yellow chicken of the woods, Lytoporus sulphureus, is one that we don't serve on courses. I'll happily eat this mushroom, only when cooked. Cook all your wild mushrooms, but this is one that we don't serve on our courses because it's reputed to cause an allergic reaction in about 1 in 50 people or something like that, which is a bit too much. When we take out a few thousand people every year, that's a bit too much of a risk as far as I'm concerned. So really, when you're eating something new, if you want to be ultra safe, you should only eat a small bit of it and then wait 24 hours to see what happens. I certainly apply that to chicken of the woods. This one's growing out of an oak tree, but it happily grows out of willow, so you will see it on riversides all over the UK. When young, it's one of my favourite mushrooms. As a vegetarian, I think it's about the best chicken substitute there is. When it's older, it's not so pleasant. It gets a bit of an acrid taste and an unpleasant texture. But when young and well cooked, this mushroom is delicious. First time you try it though, only have a small piece, wait 24 hours and see what happens. As long as you don't get any sort of tummy gurgling, or apparently it can make your lips swell up a little bit, which I know some people pay for, but it's not really something you want as a side effect from your dinner. Wait 24 hours, make sure nothing like that happens, and that means if nothing happens, that you can eat chicken of the woods happily with no problem whatsoever. But be aware, if you're serving it to a dinner of 15 to 20 people or something like that, there's a chance someone might have a bit of an allergic reaction to it, so you should warn them beforehand and let them decide for themselves if they are willing to take that risk. So allergic reactions, that's something that can happen whenever you eat anything new. And as promised, I'm about to show you that phototoxic plant that was mentioned in Foraging for Beginners episode 1. Right here we have giant hogweed in the flesh. Nestled behind these lovely bits of hairy bittercress from episode 1, our lady's smock and some forget-me-nots and other bits and bobs, and this dock leaf. You can see there a very spotty stem. I won't get too close, Attila. And there is the shoot of our giant hogweed. And just to compare that, we've got common hogweed right beside me. There's a shoot of common hogweed. You can see they're quite similar, but this is always much more spiky. You can see the serrated spikes on the edge of the leaf there of the giant hogweed. And I'll compare that to the much less serrated but very variable leaf of our common hogweed. This is Heracleum spondylium, and this is Heracleum mantegazzianum. The sap of this plant, I don't touch it at all. If you touch the hairs on the stem, apparently it can give you that phototoxic effect. But if you get the sap of this plant on your skin on a day like today that's nice and sunny, you will burn severely. And those burns can keep coming back in the same area reputedly for up to 7 years. So this, to me, is the most dangerous plant in the country. And there's its shoots. Once more. When this is mature, it can get to 4 meters tall. This is a very young plant, and this big shade leaf can get twice that size, almost like gunnera. If you know what gunnera is, you'll see that in local parks, planted normally on riversides as well. Looks like giant rhubarb. The leaves get enormous, and this can get a lot bigger than this. And if it is left to grow here, it will get twice as tall as even the best looking common hogweed around here. So beware of your giant hogweed. Common hogweed can get spots on the stem, but if you can get in... The stem is not normally quite so vicious looking as this. I'll get that out your way. There you go. Stay away from this plant. Right, now I'm going to show you an absolutely fantastic plant that always grows with its feet in the water. But just before I do, a quick reminder that with this series we're doing a promotion where if you book a foraging course through our website using the voucher code YouTube1, you will receive a free copy of our foraging journal so that you can record where and when you've found things, and that means you'll be able to go back in future years and find the same things, hopefully. As I said in the first episode, the best way to get into foraging is to go out with someone who knows what they're talking about, and that's what you'll get if you come on one of our courses. So now onto the plants. Down here we've got two very similar looking plants superficially. There are some differences though. Both are edible, but one I don't consider safe for beginner foragers. In my left hand here, I've got fool's watercress, Apium nodiflorum. And in my right hand, I've got true watercress, Nasturtium officinale. Now, have a look at these leaves. You'll see that the leaves of the fool's watercress kind of wrap around the stem, whereas the leaves of the true watercress don't. There are other ways to tell the difference that are a little bit easier as well. I'll go through those in just a second. The main thing is though that this is in the carrot family, and there are some other poisonous lookalikes in the carrot family that grow in exactly the same environment. Things like lesser and greater water parsnip for a start, and also a plant that I'm going to show you a bit later in this video, which might just put you off picking from the carrot family altogether. This plant in my right hand, Nasturtium officinale, is in the brassica or cabbage family of plants. Now, every member of the cabbage family is edible, whereas there are some truly poisonous and very good edibles in the carrot family. Come down here and I'll show you how to tell the difference. On the right there, with the sort of more bluish green leaves, is our true watercress, and then the brighter, more sort of vibrant green on the left is our fool's watercress. They can look a little bit more similar in colour though. They do have different growth systems, so this one here will be growing from a rosette, as you can see, with the flowering stem coming out the middle. Whereas our brassica family grow a stem with leaf branches or petioles coming out the side. The key difference though is the flowering system of the brassica family and the carrot family. The carrot family all have what are called umbels. I will show you that later in this video. The brassica family all have small flowers that don't all come out from the same spot like an umbel, but small flowers which are in a cruciform shape. Cruciform means cross-shaped. There's always 4 petals on your brassica family, flowers, and they should always be in a cross shape. Now that's a great tip for beginner foragers. Anything in the brassica family is edible, and most plants in the UK that have cruciform flowers are in the brassica family. So if you see that type of flower, you can be, well, not totally, but reasonably sure that you've got something in the Brassica family. There are other plants in the UK that have cruciform flowers though. Now, this plant, as I said, is perfectly edible, but one more warning in this video, I'm afraid. When you're picking from waterways in the wild, you shouldn't really eat watercress or fool's watercress raw. If this stream has passed through a field where there's sheep, then there's a chance that this stream could contain liver flukes, which can get into the cresses, the watercresses, and other plants that grow in streams as well. Those liver flukes, if you ingest them, they can get into your liver, and they are a particularly nasty parasite. So I would not eat this watercress from this stream raw. I'm an ultra safe forager though. As I said earlier, I've never poisoned myself yet, and I've never ingested, as far as I know, any parasites yet either. I don't eat watercress from streams like this raw. What I'll do with this is take it home and make a lovely watercress soup. Bit of carrot, celery and onion, and then a whole load of watercress and a little bit of stock, and you've made yourself an absolutely fantastic soup. If you do want to use it as a salad leaf, what I would recommend is taking a plant and washing it, or growing it yourself. Washing it and growing it at home yourself. Or buy it from the shops. It's just simply not worth the risk of liver flukes. Anyway, Nasturtium officinale, our true watercress, a really lovely, peppery, cressy tasting plant with cruciform flowers. Now we've just come not too far away from where I was showing you the watercress and the fool's watercress. One thing I forgot to mention about those plants is that the fool's watercress and the other lookalikes in the carrot family, the water parsnips, smell of carrots or parsnip. Whereas the watercress, the one I consider safe for beginners, particularly when it's in flower, that one smells of cress. So as long as your nose works, that's another way of differentiating those two families of plants. Now, this here is some hawthorn, as you can see. Like many other plants now around here in the middle of May, it's coming into flower. This is something that will definitely feature in the hedgerows episode of Foraging for Beginners, because these leaves and the berries are something that I make great use of. But it's not really specifically a riverside plant. But down here, we have a plant that always grows with its feet in the water or somewhere very moist. This is all the same plant, although you'll see kind of two different colours. This one here in flower is much bigger and darker green, but I'll start off describing the younger ones. So here we have our brook lime. Now it looks a little bit like mint, but unlike the mints, brook lime has a round stem. And it does look ever so slightly like the watercress and the fool's watercress, but you'll see the leaves on this plant come out opposing, but in different directions up the stem. These leaves are oval and succulent, and they are slightly serrated. You'll see that more on the mature one in flower in just a second. Now, when it's flowering, I'll take the top off of this one. There's plenty of it around here. It is extremely common. You'll see the flowering stem leaves are much thinner and more needle-like. That's a common feature in plants. They grow these big shade leaves, power pack leaves that are designed to soak in as much energy from the sun as possible, so that they can grow those flowering stems. And then the leaves on the flowering stems on many plants are much thinner or a different shape. Now look at these beautiful little blue flowers. This plant has a fantastic scientific name which I really love. This is Veronica beccabunga. Speedwell, I think, is in the same family with very similar flowers. It is entirely edible, but it's not a plant that I think is particularly tasty. The leaves have a bitterness to them and a bit of pepperiness. If you put them in salads, use them very sparingly. I tend to use this just to bulk up soups and stews and things like that because it is so readily available and it adds a good bit of herbage to your dishes. It is another plant, just like the watercresses that I was talking about earlier though, that can get liver flukes on the plant. Now, I've read other sources saying wash your plants from streams like this, but you've heard what I said about watercress. I prefer to cook them to be absolutely sure that there's no chance of liver flukes whatsoever. Although this has been eaten as a salad plant all over Europe for millennia probably, and it is still eaten as a salad leaf today. Like I said though, one that I don't particularly find that tasty, so I tend to just use it to bulk up nice tasty soups and stews. Brooklime, Veronica Beccabunga. If you walk around moist places, you will see this plant. Let's go and find something else. So a lot of this video so far has probably been putting you off foraging. I thought I would spin that around for you right now and show you my favourite plant to go foraging for. It's nothing unusual, it's right down here, and all of you, if you don't know about this, you should. Here we have our wild garlic, or bear garlic. Allium ursinum, which is a particularly common riverside plant throughout the UK. We're into May now, so this has gone into flower. Here's one of the last flowers remaining. So it's got into flower in Herefordshire. We've had some hot weather recently, and a lot of this has gone into seed. Now this is my favourite time to harvest the wild garlic plant because those seeds are particularly tasty. I'll get to that in just a second, but this plant has a special place in my forager's heart because not only do I love garlic, and this tastes of garlic, just like the cloves that you buy in the shops, but it starts my foraging year because it first comes up around here in February, and that kind of brings me out of hibernation, if you like. It gives me a reason to go out for walks in February, to pick the first shoots of the wild garlic as it's coming up. Now, its key identifier is really simple. If you grab a leaf, crush it up and smell it, it stinks of garlic. That's how you differentiate this from any of the lookalike plants. There are a few dangerous lookalikes. I suppose lily of the valley, being deadly poisonous, is probably the most dangerous, but it's a slightly different colour. I'll drop in a photo of lily of the valley now so that you can see what that looks like. It's not very similar to wild garlic, it just has a similar leaf shape. It certainly doesn't have this amazing, pungent, garlicky aroma. The other potentially dangerous lookalike for lily, or for wild garlic rather, is this plant here. This is the arum lily, Arum maculatum, or lords and ladies, or cuckoo pint it gets called. And this is a plant that when mature you shouldn't mistake for wild garlic because the leaves have these lobed rounded tails. But when young, the leaves of arum do not have those tails. This is all dusty from a little bit of silt from the River Wye beside me. They're normally bright green, but as you can see with no tails, it can look quite similar in shape 2 young wild garlic leaves. And that's not the real problem. The real problem is that it grows in amongst wild garlic. So what happens quite often is when people are picking wild garlic, they'll be a little bit too slapdash about it, and they'll pick handfuls at a time. And if you do that without taking good care, you might well end up with some lords and ladies in your forager's bag or basket. And if you do, it's not a deadly mistake to make, like lily of the valley could potentially be, but Lords and Ladies has what are called calcium oxalate crystals in it, which they're tiny little needle sharp crystals which will get embedded in your tongue and your mouth, and they're a major irritant. So if you eat those, I've had it described to me as eating paper cuts, which is clearly not pleasant at all. So watch out when you're picking your wild garlic. Make sure you don't pick different plants in amongst each little handful that you pick, and if you're ever unsure, crush the leaf up that you're picking and have a smell, and if it stinks of garlic, you've got the right plant. Now, just to give you a little bit more information about the plant, there are different levels of flavour depending on which part of the plant you pick. I've just eaten what we call garlic level 1, which is one of the leaves, and for me, because I love garlic, those leaves are mild enough to just put into a salad. Then you get garlic level 2, which would be one of these flower buds when it's unopened. They have a little sheath around, and they're almost like little teardrop shaped flower buds. Those are much hotter and much more garlicky. So if you're using those in your cooking, just be aware there's a bit of extra heat. Then you've got garlic level 3, which is when this umbel has nothing but white flowers on it. And that is hotter again, spicier, more peppery. So if you're using the leaves to, the petals to garnish something, just be aware you're going to be adding quite a lot of heat. And then you've got what we call garlic level 4, which is these seed pods here whilst they're still green. The seeds inside will go black and hard after a little while, but right now they're soft and green. And those little seed pods, when the seeds are green, are like garlic bombs in your cooking. So we make a garlic and hogweed soup. When I'm making that soup, if I'm using the leaves, I will put them in at the end of cooking. Or if I'm making a stir fry, I'll put the leaves in at the end of cooking because they're mild. If I'm using the flowers, I'll garnish sparingly because they're quite hot. If I'm using the seed pods, I'll put them in at the beginning of cooking because they are particularly punchy. I'll just have a munch of this cross between garlic level 3 and level 4 now. And that is an amazing flavour. I wish that you could taste what I'm tasting now. In fact, go out and find some because it's a lovely, sweet, but spicy, garlicky flavour that I'm getting from these lovely green seed pods at the moment. So, as you've found out, there are dangerous plants and dangers to foraging in general. There's dangerous plants on riversides, but we also have my favourite plant to go foraging for in the whole of the UK. Use it to make wild garlic pestos, use it in anything that you would normally use garlic in. Just be aware of the different flavours you get from the different parts. I think the only thing you can't do with wild garlic that you can do with a normal garlic clove is roast it. So I love roasted garlic bulbs, but these seed pods certainly wouldn't roast quite so well as a garlic bulb. Anything else that you use garlic in, you can use wild garlic in instead. And it grows in abundance in certain places. So look out for your wild garlic. Number 1 on the tasty riverside plant list. Right, okay, so we're by a little stream that's a tributary to this lovely little lake here, and there are lots of different plants all loving it beside this stream. Loads of plants love it beside water. Not all of them are specific to riversides and stream sides, but there's quite a few of one different family here. It's a family that we've already covered a couple of times, the carrot family, and I've got two different members right here. This one is a very common one, often called cow parsley. This is Anthriscus sylvestris, or wild chervil, and these are the leaves of your wild chervil, which are very similar to your hemlock leaves that I showed you in Foraging for Beginners episode 1. And these flowers are also very similar to hemlock flowers. Now, unlike the hemlock, it doesn't have blotches on the stem. The leaves are hairy, and the leaf stems, the petioles, are celery shaped, so there's a furrow running down the centre of the stem rather than a round hairless stem that you see on hemlock. Still, this is not one, although it is edible, it's not one I consider a good edible. Smells a bit like grass. Not one that I go for personally. There's another member of the carrot family here. This is wild Angelica, which loves it on stream sides but can be found in the woods. As you can see, this has a different leaf system to the Anthriscus sylvestris. This is Angelica sylvestris, and the leaf system on this is much more similar to your ground elder. The two lookalikes for your ground elder, which I showed you in episode 1 as well, are this plant, wild Angelica, and the elder tree. Now, the elder tree is a tree, so it's got a very woody stem. This is a plant much like your ground elder, but it doesn't smell of parsley. And although this again is edible, it is not one that I particularly like. Garden Angelica is a nice tasty plant. Wild Angelica is not. Our third member of the carrot family, and the most important one to know about, is specific to wet areas, and that's this plant here. This is Hemlock water dropwort. There's a few different water dropworts in the UK. Hemlock water dropwort is important to know as a forager because this is probably the most poisonous plant in the whole northern hemisphere of the planet. I have enough in my hand here to probably kill me within 2 hours. This plant is more toxic than any mushroom I can think of in the UK, and it is extremely common. If you just pan along here, Attila, have a look at how many of those carroty looking, almost yellow to start off with, going through to white flowers. Here's a fully open one, Attila, that you can see. Like I say, we've got a few. We've got corky fruited water dropwort and a few others. They're all highly toxic. They all have an oval stem, or a sort of flattened round stem, and they bear a striking resemblance to flat leaf parsley on the leaves. If you think you've found flat leaf parsley when you're out foraging, you haven't. You probably haven't. You've probably found this. It also gets mistaken for wild celery when it's young, but again, wild celery is extremely rare. You're not likely to find it. You're much more likely to find this, Oenanthe crocata. It's a plant that has been used as a method of execution all over Europe for millennia. Apparently they used to use it in Sardinia to kill their criminals and old people. I don't know why they used to kill the old people, but apparently that's what they did. But with their criminals, what they would do is poison them with this plant. And it works on your muscles, so it will start sort of seizing up your muscles from your feet upwards, and when that effect gets to your chest, obviously there's some important muscles there, that's when it will kill you. But then after that it goes on to contract all your facial muscles just before you die, which leaves you with a rictus grin, a nice cheesy grin on your face as you're dying from the poisoning of this plant. Now, what they used to do in Sardinia was hang up all their criminals on their port walls and city gates, much like many other cultures have done. But all of the criminals, the dead executed criminals hanging on the port walls and city gates in Sardinia, were grinning at you as you came into port, which apparently is the origins of the term sardonic grin. Now, if there is a reason to be careful when you're picking plants from beside water, this is it. You do not want to mistake this for things like your watercress, which I showed you earlier in the video. Like I said, probably the most toxic plant in the whole northern hemisphere of the planet. I am not worried about touching it though. Its smell is variable depending on your nose. Some people quite like the smell. I get a sweet smell, not too chemically, but other people say they get an awful chemical smell from the leaves when they're crushed up. But no, it smells quite pleasant to me. Anyway, extremely common. It grows beside almost every stream or river that I ever visit in the UK. There is one other good edible here though. Just beside all of our different carrot family plants, we've got this here. This is meadowsweet, Filipendula ulmaria. This is easy to identify because it has these big leaves with these small leaflets in between each of the big leaves, and then the terminal leaf is maple shaped. Also has a very distinctive smell. Some people get watermelon from the smell. I get a bit of germaline really, which is something that is different depending on your nose. And if you do get the smell of watermelon, some people actually like eating the leaves. They get a bit of a watermelony taste from the leaves. When I eat the leaves, I get a more medicinal flavour. Now that's the interesting thing about this plant, is that it contains, it's the first of two things in this video, that contain what's called salicylic acid. When you buy aspirin in the shops, you're buying acetosalicylic acid, which is a version of the salicylic acid that's been acetylized. By acetylizing it, that makes it a little bit less caustic on your stomach, but the wild stuff in this, and a tree I'm going to show you in a little while, has roughly the same medicinal effect. So if you've got a bit of a headache whilst you're out walking, you can use your meadowsweet as an aspirin substitute. You can use it in other ways, as an addition to vinaigrettes and things like that. It's lovely to steep the leaves in your vinegars before you make your salad dressings. It works beautifully for that. But even better, when it comes into flower, I'll drop in some photos of the flower now. You can see that off-white nested umbel type flower. It's not an umbel like our carrot families, but it looks a bit like one. It's a very nested, clustered, off-white flower there. That can be used to make meadowsweet champagne, which is a lovely drink, much like your elderflower champagne. It does always end up a little bit murkier looking than elderflower champagne, but it's great for that. And the flower heads can be used, and the leaves can be used to flavour beers and things like that as well. So it is a useful forager's plant, and it loves it where it is wet. There you go, your meadowsweet. Filipendula ulmaria, Our Lady of the Meadow. This is a wonderful plant. This one here is a very deadly one. Right, now I'm standing by the banks of the beautiful River Wye underneath one of the two common types of tree that line our riverbanks all over the UK. The others are alders. There's no real edible or poisonous features to the alder, so they're not going to be part of this video. But these are one of the 9 or 10 types of willow that we have in the UK. Now, when I was talking earlier about meadowsweet, I mentioned that meadowsweet contains salicylic acid. This is the Salix genus of trees, and I believe salicylic acid was named after this genus because salicylic acid is present in the leaves of your willow tree as well. So just like I was mentioning about meadowsweet, if you've got a bit of a headache or something like that whilst you're out walking, you can nibble the leaves of the willow tree and give yourself a mild dose of wild aspirin. It's not as good, as I said before, as the aspirin you buy in the shops because it's slightly more caustic on your tummy, so don't have too much of it or too regularly, but it should have the same medicinal effects. Now, there's an old wives' tale about, or that involves this tree, and I do love it when an old wives' tale gets proved true. So back in the Middle Ages and before in the UK, when there was druid healers and witches and people like that, old apothecaries, what they would do is stock a beaver's gallbladder and give that to people as a cure-all for anything. Modern science now knows that when beavers live with willow, they munch willow all day long. And when they munch the willow, what happens is the salicylic acid gets highly concentrated in their gallbladders. Beavers are now wild again in the UK, hooray! But don't go munching their gallbladders nowadays, please. Go to the shops and buy some aspirin. As I said, it's better for you. Like I said though, I just like it when an old wives' tale gets proved true. I would really like to know who ate the first beaver's gallbladder though to find this out, because it's not an appealing thing. Anyway, as I said earlier when talking about the chicken of the woods fungus, you may well find a chicken of the woods growing on a willow tree. On this particular tree there's a different type of bracket fungus to show you though, so come on over here. It's quite common. This is our willow bracket. Felinus igniarius, if I've got that correct, Attila.
Yeah, you got it right.
As you can see, it looks nothing like chicken of the woods. Chicken of the woods is bright yellow, soft and malleable. These aren't poisonous, but they're technically indigestible because they are as tough as the trees they grow out of. Just so you know, there's only one type of toxic bracket in the UK, and it doesn't look like chicken of the woods. I'm going to drop in a photo of that one now. What you can see there is a cinnamon bracket. They tend to grow on birch trees. Any other trees that the cinnamon bracket grows on, Attila?
It might grow some other hardwoods, but mostly birch.
Okie dokie. So that's the only toxic bracket to watch out for in the UK. So picking your chicken of the woods, you should be entirely safe. Anyway, our beautiful willow trees. I think this is a good spot for lunch, Attila. Should we take a break?
Yes.
Now I'm going to show you a plant that you will unfortunately find beside waterways and rivers all over the UK. I say unfortunately because it is highly invasive. Down here, growing here, and the biggest one is here, we have Himalayan Balsam, Impatiens grandiflora. This is a truly magnificent plant, but as the name suggests, it's from the Himalayas. It will grow to 9 or even 10 feet tall sometimes, with some amazing flowers. I'll drop in a photo of those beautiful flowers now. It is an edible plant. Those flowers can be used to infuse gin. And we also use the very young cotyledon leaves, the first leaves of the plant, which I'll drop in a photo of now, in our salads. They're succulent and they have an unusual flavour. The rest of the plant is edible when cooked, but not particularly tasty. There's one other bit of the plant that I will happily eat, and that's the seeds, which come from this amazing exploding seed pod dispersal system, which is quite fun to pop on your way around on walks. But please don't do that, because we don't want this plant to spread. Every single plant can create 800 seeds, and it can fling them up to 21 feet with its exploding seed pods. Those seed pods and the seeds inside are perfectly edible, but because of the fact that it can fling its seeds 21 feet and it grows beside water, it flings those seeds into water, and they can then travel downstream and infest new places. And it is so vigorous that it's strangling out our native riverside flora in many parts of the UK. Now, just over here we can see what that exploding seed pod dispersal system can do. This willow obviously cracked a few years ago, still growing, this branch. Willow's a very tough tree, so the branch still has fresh growth on it, but some of the Himalayan balsam from last year obviously flung its seeds into this crack in the tree, and you can see it growing there. Now, it's not so difficult to kill as things like our Japanese knotweed. You can just uproot this plant and chuck it on the floor and you've killed it. But because it creates so many seeds, and because those seeds can lie dormant apparently for a little while, it's a plant that is particularly invasive. Just found some of those cotyledon leaves that I was talking about. Look at them, they're a completely different shape to the serrated leaves of the more mature plant. The young shoots tend to have this red stem, which is a little bit angular, not square like the mint family, but not perfectly rounded either. Anyway, Himalayan balsam, one of the most invasive species that we have in the UK. So please do not spread the seeds of this plant if you ever find it, which, if you're walking along riversides, unfortunately, you almost definitely will. Right, now I am standing beside one of my favourite waterside plants that we have growing in the UK. Not the nettles, they were part of Foraging for Beginners episode 1. They grow everywhere, as you know, but this plant growing in amongst the nettles, this big beauty here, I think is one that I'm going to harvest. That is water mint, Mentha aquatica. Now, a good thing to be able to do when you're out foraging is identify what family plants are in, and I've given you some tips on how to identify the brassicas. There's a great tip for identifying your mints. All members of the mint family, including your dead nettles, your lamiastrae, have a square stem, as you can see there. Most of the mints are edible. I think the only toxic ones are the big tall hemp nettles, which are very loosely foliated, nothing like this plant here. Now, not all mints smell of mint, and even some of the ones that smell of mint do not taste of mint. But this water mint, with these slightly serrated leaves, is one of the, if not the tastiest as far as I'm concerned, of the mint family. You crush these leaves up and you get a fantastic pungent aroma of mint. And if you eat the leaves, you get that lovely, fresh, minty flavour. So anything you're going to use your mints in, you can use this lovely water mint in. It has an almost clover-like flower or a chive-like flower. It's sort of light pink to almost purpley in colour with hairs coming out of it. So if you see that flower, it's quite nice and easy to identify. But with this one, check for the square stem. Check for the slightly serrated leaves. Crush it up, have a smell, and if you've got that lovely minty smell, then have a nibble, and you should get a lovely minty flavour. It does have a few lookalikes in the same genus. This one, Mentha aquatica though, like I said, is probably my favourite mint that we collect from the wild. So that was episode 2 of Foraging for Beginners, Risks and Riversides. I do hope all those risks and dangers that I've described in this video haven't put you off foraging entirely. Now you're armed with that knowledge, they shouldn't really be risks. We're going to be coming out with the next few episodes of this series in the next couple of months, but I just wanted you guys to know we have just recently, after many years of people suggesting we should, started up a Patreon account where you can help support this channel and the other free things that we at Wild Foods UK provide, like our online mushroom guide, our online plant guide, the recipes on the website, the free identification requests that we answer, and the occasional poisoning emergency that we help out with. So what is it the other YouTubers always say, Attila? I think it's like, subscribe and ring the bell. I don't know what ring the bell means, but most importantly, if you do want to help support this channel, go to the link below and join our Patreon account. See you again soon. Those things though. So that's the but just so that you guys know, we are and risks of for deal with on a irregular but online plant guide, our online mushroom guide. Oh, I've got something stuck in my throat. Believe me, I've never had any problem with any of those things that I've mentioned because I know soon, but I've got something else to ask. Picking some of the plants that I've showed you. Just so you guys know, and the free emails that we, I'll get this time. I've got it now. Thank you very much. If you want to find out more, go to wildfooduk.com. Can we just try that once more? I think that was quite